We are live.
Fantastic, and thank you, Martha. And welcome everybody to Hash Sales EU, our 42nd edition of this particular program. Hash Sales EU is, of course, the Twitter handle that we use. So if you're on Twitter, welcome, and thank you very much for participating. And if you're watching us live on G+, then welcome as well. Today's guest is Amanda. Amanda is the VP of Marketing for Ringlead, which is a fantastic product. I've used it personally, and they're integrating with Pipeliner CRM. And I have to say, it makes my job so much easier. Now, Amanda, you've worked with ourselves previously in other lives, should we say, with content, etc. So why don't you introduce yourself? Why don't you tell them the Ringlead website and what your Twitter handle is?
Sure. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Yes, my name is Amanda Nelson, and I run marketing for Ringlead, and our site is ringlead.com. And we're a data quality platform. We do a number of apps and services to help companies, marketers, salespeople just do their job better and make sure their data is clean because, you know, after all, it's really hard to pull reports, be efficient, and do your job well when your data is terrible. So we work hard to help you make your data run smoothly. So that's a bit about Ringlead. And for me, I am a content marketing guru, I guess. I just love content. I've been doing it for about 4 years. I've worked at a number of SaaS companies doing content marketing from Salesforce to Radian6, and now at Ringlead. And it's very exciting to use content to create awareness, educate our audience, and really solve the everyday business problems of our customers.
Absolutely, I think it's increasingly important these days to turn around and be able to use the content to lure in the initial people who are actually in the buyer cycle, and you've got to do that to help then generate the leads as you move forward, which of course is today's topic. How are we going to generate leads? Which is, at the end of the day, I think it's everybody marketers kind of their goal, obviously with brand awareness, etc. as well. But of course, it's what salespeople want from marketing is always leads. Give me more leads. And in fact, if you ask any sales guy, they just don't have enough of them. And if they have too many, there's never enough quality of them. So that's the way we work, unfortunately. Okay, so let's dive into question one. How can you find and reach your target audience without spending a huge amount of time, money, and resources? Because obviously, you can buy leads quite easily these days. You know, you can use pay-per-click, you can buy them from agencies, etc. So throwing money at the problem is quite easy. But for me, it's almost a short-term mechanism to get the leads in now, and what you need to do is build a longer-term lead strategy. So question one, how can you find and reach your target audience without spending huge amounts of time and money in doing so?
You know, I have 2 ways to do it, and they both don't cost anything. So I'm pretty excited to talk about that. The first one is talking to your customers and your prospects. That doesn't cost any money. It shouldn't take you a lot of time. It's about sitting in on a few sales demos, having conversations with salespeople, having conversations with customer service, and really getting to know the people that buy and use your product every day, because that's going to give you a lot of insight into what are their pain points, their challenges. It'll give you insight into the words they use and how they speak about things. And so as a marketer, you can really tap into that and use similar language and understanding. So just talking to them, have coffee with them, go to conferences that they go to, and just sit down. And don't be afraid to ask questions like, how do you spend your morning? What are some of your favorite websites? What do you read every day? What keeps you up at night? People like to talk about themselves, so it's pretty easy to get folks just engaging with you if you're asking those kind of open questions. So that's one, and then the second one is your data. Your data gives you all the access and information you need. So by digging into your CRM, by digging into your marketing automation and really understanding the information about your customers, who they are, how they use your product, how often, that's going to give you a lot of insight as well. So again, 2 things that don't really cost money, but just, you know, use a little bit of your time to do, and it'll really pay off.
Yeah, I think it's all about communication, really, isn't it? Once you're communicating with your customers or your prospects, and I think in sales in particular, we like to use the language that the prospect's using, and of course we're all about pain resolution. You know, if you think about solution selling, as it was in consultative sales, it's what's your problem and how can I solve it? And understanding that is at the core of being able to sell somebody something. Because if you don't resolve a problem, then they don't see the value in your issue. And I guess that does begin with marketing and in the lead cycle.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times marketers are marketing to their audience and they don't even really, have never spoken to them. So that's why I think it's very important for marketers to sit in on sales calls and really talk to the salespeople every week. And the salespeople are the ones that should really understand what the customers are doing and going through, why they're buying, what they need. And so sales guys have all the expertise and insight. They may not even know it.
Yeah, I think that's largely true. Being a salesperson, obviously, I'd have to say that. I think there's a difference between sometimes what marketing puts out and what salespeople actually sell, and that's the whole sales and marketing alignment. For me, it's a really interesting topic and area to explore. I think if you're turning around and getting it right, then that 90% of marketing collateral that's generated, which doesn't get used, should really be used to a much higher degree. And it's a question of having to make sure that you're aligned properly on both sides of the fence. I think sales needs to do more. We're not very good at articulating what the customer tells us or what problems we encounter to marketing. So it has to be a two-way conversation.
Marketers are good at getting that information out and asking the right questions and phrasing it the way that needs to be phrased, but the actual context and the insight they may not have. And so it's kind of, yes, that conversation to ask the right questions, get the right answers, and then frame the best message around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that works very well. So what else other than content is going to be the main driver for getting leads into the system?
So, knowing your audience is huge. Content can only come once you understand the pain points and the challenges that your audience faces. So, creating a funnel and a cycle, especially in B2B, in B2B, it's not like buying a Coke. You don't just walk up to a machine, you make the Coke purchase, and you're done. There's a long cycle, and so you need to nurture them all the way through. Once you've created that educational top of the funnel content, it's about driving them all the way through to the sale. What's in the middle of the funnel that's going to drive them? Is it a relevant case study? Is it a webinar about a product? Is it an in-person conversation or sponsoring an event? Find out what those different touch points are. And, content really works well with, like you said, paid, the in-person with trade shows. You have to mix it with other things. It can't just live on its own, just like paid can't live on its own.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you're completely right. I think it's interesting you mentioned the middle of the funnel, because that's often known as the black hole of your sales funnel, because, of course, at the beginning you've got marketing, and it's very clear quite often what the prospect is looking for at that stage, and of course later on it's clearly where sales begins to kick in, etc. So it's all about closure, and it's the middle ground where you tend to get lost and where prospects tend to slow down if you're not careful. And then of course with the sales team, it's do nothing. The prospects turns around, they want to do something, but if there's no compelling event, if the messaging hasn't been created and the value proposition from either marketing or sales hasn't been done right, the default option is not to actually change at all. So it's getting that content for that area, which I think is key to moving the sales along that buyer cycle.
Yeah, I think it's the middle funnel is confusing because it's about who owns it, and so a mentor of mine gave me this great analogy, which I'll share. So in top of the funnel, it's like driving a car, and marketing is in the front seat driving that car. And they've got the content, they're owning it. At the bottom of the funnel, sales is in the driver's seat. And marketing might be in the back seat helping out with materials, content, but it's very clear who is the driver in those two areas. But middle of the funnel is more fuzzy. It's hard to tell who should really be driving that. And so if marketing is driving that, it's almost like sales needs to sit right next to them and say, okay, what is the best material at this point? Yeah. What are we going to do? Because it is a marriage of the two once you hit middle. And so that's something that you have to work on at your company and really have that marketing and sales alignment.
No, I think that's completely correct. I would actually go further and say that sales and marketing need to sit hand in hand throughout the entire life cycle. And I think it's one of our later questions where we talk about what do you do with leads which have perhaps slowed down or died at this point in time. I think there's, working together throughout the entire life cycle is a very good thing. In fact, I quite often quote Math Marketing, who showed a study where 209% increase in revenue and closure rates based upon the fact you have good sales and marketing. And that was a 2004 study they did in conjunction with Marketo, which was a fantastic sales and marketing alignment one. So move on to question 2, otherwise I'll get told off for moving too slowly. How do you match content to the buying cycle, which is the natural extension to that question?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that there's a level of accountability in each phase of the funnel, and so it's about outlining it and coming up with what is the strategy of what the prospect will need in each phase, and then working with sales to really align that. So as you said, marketing and sales do need to work together, but somebody needs to be accountable all the way through to make sure that that's happening. And the thing about the funnel is that when we picture it, we really do picture that upside down triangle, but it's not always that way. If you picture it, it's almost like a bucket with holes in it, and people are falling out left and right and coming in different angles. And so someone could come in at middle, someone could come in at bottom, someone come in at top, someone could be in bottom and go back to top. So it's about making sure your content is really aligned and telling that cohesive story all the way through, whether it's bottom up, top down, or some other way.
Absolutely.
So that's really important. And I think, you know, as you get further down, it's about putting in a little more product till obviously the sales call deck is really the product heavy piece or the proposal at the bottom.
So in that middle of the funnel, which we talked about just before, and we're looking at the content, and we're getting into a little bit more product, etc. with that, how do we turn around and deal with the whole committee buying that you tend to get with B2B? Because initially at the early stages, certainly for CRM, for example, we tend to find that the project is initiated by the VP of sales or the CEO, etc. And quite often it's a sales administrator or fairly junior salesperson that's actually doing the research work. But then when we get to that middle of the funnel, the landscape has changed dramatically for the sales. So you're looking at multiple buyers with different agendas, and they're fresh to the product effectively that you're trying to sell. How do you manage that with the content aspect?
You know, I think that involving everybody from the beginning is the best way that you're going to win. So when you come up with your strategy, whether, you know, for the whole company, and really content is part of that, marketing is part of it, sales, you're coming up with your goals, your vision, your metrics. Have those entry-level BDRs or SDRs as part of that conversation, and really make sure everybody is on board and drinking the Kool-Aid, understanding the vision and where you're trying to go. And so that when the point comes when a piece of content that's more lofty leads to a conversation with an entry-level salesperson, everybody is on the same page and understands this is what we're ultimately trying to do. And I think that the other piece is that you should only be talking about what you're comfortable talking about in your level and in your area of expertise. BDRs bring a lot of really great insight to the table. They're talking to customers probably more than, and prospects more than anybody else, but they have their certain level of expertise. So just to be open and transparent about that, and open and transparent about your cycles, so that the prospect knows where they're going and what to expect.
Yeah, we do get that feedback quite a bit, that often the prospect actually doesn't know what the buyer journey is going to look like. And of course you as an organization do, because you've been through it many times before with people looking for your products and service, but this could be the first time they're going through it. So in which case I do find it handy and useful to be able to map out the journey for the prospect so they understand what they're likely to need at different stages. And I also think that also sets the expectation that you're going to need, for example, in the CRM industry, you'll need to speak to somebody senior at some point, because they're going to have the budgetary sign-off, and you're not going to be able to do it just with the sales administrator or the sales manager.
Right, and I think that, you know, if someone who might be listening or watching to this is like, how do you do that? And I think really simple things, starting with your website. Be very clear. If someone's about to download an ebook, let them know that they're going to receive an email with the ebook. And then in the email, let them know that we would love to reach out to you, or have a picture of the actual person who's going to be calling you in the email, or from that person. You know, really start to make those personal relationships. And I think the other piece is that, you know, you want to make sure that you're qualifying the person. So yes, they may need that big conversation, but you don't want to waste their time or yours setting that whole thing up if it's not the right fit right now or at all. So, you know, setting those expectations and kind of qualifying them and having a conversation with them when you call them from a BDR standpoint about the content they just downloaded or the questions they're asking, and then take it to the next level from there.
Absolutely. I think it's the key aspect for myself has always been trying to understand what their particular issue is. And sometimes you may recognize that issue straight away because you've seen it so many times before and you know what the solution is. But of course, you've got to give the prospect time to be able to articulate that to you, because if you come out too fast with it, they do feel pressured and that you're selling to them rather than turning around and listening to them. And that for me as a sales guy is the key aspect. And I think the content needs to drive them in the direction of where your solution is to help them make that decision. But ultimately, it also needs to elicit or to help them try to articulate what the problem is so that they can then be offered the solution by your sales team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's move on to question 3. What are the benefits of keeping your database accurate?
So I think, and not just because I work for Ringlead and we do this, but also I really do believe technology is the answer to this. There's a lot of great opportunities to be more efficient, save money, work faster, all of those things as a result of technology. So whether it's something you build in-house, whether you use something that's already in existence, or you're paying for something that's really expensive or free, the point is to find the right technology for you and automate that process as much as possible. And that's going to free you up to be able to focus on really driving your goals and being more productive, getting promoted, whatever your goal is. And honestly, that's really what we want, is we want to help you get that. That's a huge challenge. Let us handle it. And then that way you can focus on the bigger things you need to focus on.
Absolutely. I think that's... Data entry is the bugbear of every sales guy's life, because we're asked more than other people to enter the information because we're talking to the prospect effectively. So being able to automate some of that is absolutely critical. And I also think one of the other things, as I'm a CRM person, the CRM aspect of that is, of course, duplicates. You get so many duplicates in your data that it's difficult to manage. And then what happens? You can't use it for marketing very well, because then you start turning around and sending the same person multiple emails, and they hate it. And then all of a sudden, you're unsubscribed, you're marked down as spam, and it's a downward spiral from there. So data quality is absolutely critical to any system that you're going to use, either from a sales or marketing. I don't care if it's CRM or whatever. You need to make sure it's accurate. You need to make sure it's good quality.
Oh yeah, we did a post, 100 consequences of bad data, and a lot of it is from duplicates, and I pulled it from customers, and I talked to the team, and it was really easy to write 100. I think we could have written way more, but duplicate data results in it can result in your customers leaving. It can result in employees leaving. It costs you money because you're paying for it in your, if you're paying by record in your CRM or your marketing automation platform, you're paying for multiple records that exist in duplicate, and that's a waste of money and storage space and all of those things. So, you know, a lot of times customers come to us with their hair on fire around duplicates, and that's usually the biggest challenge we help with. But there's so much more, and there's so many things you can do to avoid that in the first place. So just being aware of your data and knowing that data is your biggest asset. It's the most important thing that you have as a company. It's yours more than money. I mean, money is not unique to you. Everybody has money, but data is unique to you, and you could do so much with it. So, you know, take care of it and get some good technology to help you do that.
So the sales guy can only enter so much information, and we know that it's critical to be able to get that accurate. But we're under time pressure because we've got to do a lot of different things. You know, we've got to be on the phone calling people. We've got to be doing face-to-face meetings. We've now got to be off in LinkedIn, turning around and linking to people, building our network. We're supposed to be tweeting. We're supposed to be on Facebook. We're supposed to be on Instagram and everything else. And we're probably supposed to be on Meerkat and Periscope as well at this point in time. So we don't really have too much time to concentrate on the data, and it often gets left by the wayside for that reason, because we simply give it a low priority.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on your side of the fence, you're bound to say, well, it needs a higher priority. But how can we turn around and help the salespeople take a piece of data, get it into the system, and fill out that information as well? So rather than just having a name and address, you've actually got more than that. How would you suggest people go about doing that?
I think CRM adoption, which is start kind of where you're going, is a huge challenge, not just for salespeople, but marketers. You spend so much time and money buying the CRM and getting all ready to go, and if you don't use it, it's a waste. And CRM is one of the best ways to grow revenue, be more efficient, save money in the long run. I mean, it's really the heart behind your company. So it's really sad that people don't pay more attention and time into it, but at the same time, it isn't a focus because you want to get that next deal and you want to grow your business. So it all relates, but it's definitely a known challenge that you're not focusing on your data as much as you're focusing on your prospect or your customer, which obviously is number one. So when it comes to CRM adoption, data is only going to help you because if you, for example, data standardization, selecting the fields ahead of time that the salespeople need to fill out, or having technology in your CRM so you can just easily copy and paste versus having to type manually. There's all these little tools and tricks that you can do to make the job easier, and then training and some type of incentive program or enablement program to make it easier for the salespeople to enter the data. Make it, it's got to be mobile friendly so they can enter it in their car on the go. You have to think about the salesperson first and then build the technology around them. So that's crucial. And, I think everybody should be their own data steward and love the data that they have, but the reality is at least an organization needs to have some kind of data steward, whether it's an admin, some type of administrator, or and someone in IT or a data scientist, somebody that really owns it that everybody can go to. So I think if you can't be the data steward, have somebody at your company who is that you can go to.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. And you have to think about the technology second and the way people work first, and then you can turn around and apply that to be able to make the data more accurate as a result. Which takes us nicely on to question 4. How can you guarantee accurate data? Obviously, I don't think you can necessarily guarantee there's accurate data, but you can do things to help.
Yeah, so data becomes inaccurate all the time. It's constantly becoming outdated, or it's missing, or it's a duplicate. People are entering data into your CRM as you speak, and some are doing it one way and others are doing another. Data's coming into your CRM from forms, it's coming into your CRM from lists. So there's lots of ways data is coming in on top of the fact that I think it's about 75 phone numbers change every 30 minutes. People are constantly changing jobs every 2 or 3 years. You have multiple email addresses, so I have Amanda@ringlead.com, but I also have anelson@ringlead.com. So a CRM sees that as 2 people, but it's still one. In addition, even little things, the way you enter data. So one salesperson could write UK, another could write United Kingdom, and that's seen as 2 countries in a CRM potentially when it's the same to us as humans. So it's about standardizing your data, and again, great technology can help you get there, and spending the time to set it up in the first place so that you are standardizing or organizing ahead of time and creating almost like a enforced schema for how people enter data, so they can only enter UK, not United Kingdom, or knowing that one email address is the same as another, even though they're 2 variations based on the domain within the email string. So, coming up with your standardization, organizing it, using a great data quality specialist to help you do it up front will save in the long run. Accurate data affects everything. Again, there's just so many consequences of bad data or missing data, and you don't want all those unsubscribes from your email. You don't want to send people the same email because they have 2 different email addresses, things like that. So get ahead of it, and then also update it because it's going to keep changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely true. It's the unsubscribes are an issue. The professionalism of your organization and therefore brand are at stake as well. And of course, if you're using marketing automation systems, lots of them, it's paid on a contact listed basis as well, so can end up costing you a small fortune very quickly, very easily. Yeah, just to mention, there's a tool I've used in the past called evercontact.com, which actually turns around and strips the signature from emails and puts it into your contact record. So then it'll pass out the social and the telephone numbers and the address, which is a great little tool for helping with that. Obviously, you've got Ringlead as well, which, in fact, I've got a link coming up very shortly, which shows you how I used it with Pipeline. You can see it interacting with LinkedIn to capture multiple records in one go and put them into your CRM system, which is a fantastic way of using it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean, finding great little tools and automated approaches to doing your job better and bringing in contact data that's fresh and updated and automatically bringing it into your CRM, for example, so you don't have to type it in manually or have to remember that it needs to be updated. I think that the best way, LinkedIn is really the best data for the most updated information. The first place you go to update when you have a new job or a new title is LinkedIn. So, tapping into the sources that exist out there and integrating them and tying them back to your CRM and just being aware of how data is changing and contact information is changing is just one way to stay on top of everything.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because, in fact, a lot of the tools which you get to help keep you updated, like Brewster and various other systems like that, they're really designed on a B2C level. In fact, Ringlead is actually one of the only tools which is really B2B orientated in that capacity. So I think the marketplace in the data quality has to move away from post implementation of data cleansing, so it's after the data is actually got in and into that forward-thinking mentality. So it's proactive, like the Ringlead capture application is, where it turns around and grabs the data in advance and helps to qualify the information as it goes through.
Right. So, for example, we like to think of CRM as like a brand new house that you just bought. It's gorgeous. It's empty. You're going to fill it up. Are you going to move all your crap from your old house into your brand new house and then get rid of it? Or are you only going to move the beautiful, nice stuff and furniture you have into your new house? So think about it as, you don't want to work backwards. You want to move forward. So make sure your data is right and ready to go and clean and up to date before you move it all into your CRM.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I fully believe that actually people believe there is something called a data fairy. The data fairy comes along and magically dedupes all of your data and makes it fit your new reports, your new shiny reports, and your new shiny CRM that you're looking for. And it all happens via the data fairy.
I like that. I mean, that's the name of our company.
That's right. Yeah. It's it's one of those things where, in fact, it needs to be done to make the data accurate, to make your reports accurate, which means basically the business intelligent reporting and dashboarding you're doing doesn't work if your data is not accurate, and it's that straightforward. So you have to nail this in the first place. So I think absolutely true. When you're going to move systems, etc., get your data cleaned as part of that process, and it's a very good thing to do.
Yep, data quality starts before you migrate, before you have a new user come in. It really needs to be at the beginning as well as once you're already in it, because data does get outdated over time.
Absolutely. Cool, let's move on to question 5. What role does marketing automation software play in lead generation success?
Marketing automation enables you to be really more automated in your processes. So once you really focus and set up your nurture and your cycles and your email programs within the software, it's going to do a lot of it for you. And then what you can do is watch in real time the results and the analytics and tweak and test and try different things. Did that headline work? Or how many clicks did we get? Or did we get unsubscribes, and why? And enable you to segment, just do more than you really could. I mean, marketing automation can really mean anything, right? It could mean SurveyMonkey with a landing page that you built with GeoCities. It really can be anything. But then it can also be something as robust as Eloqua or Marketo with real-time landing page results and all these embedded forms and mobile first, and there's really all these things you can do. So I think that the point is to kind of figure out where you are with your organization now and where you want to go, and then buy for that and build your marketing automation strategy and your technology around where you want to be and how you want to grow. So then from there you can really build out your nurture and your lead gen process using the right technology.
Absolutely. I think it comes back down to strategy. You have to get the strategy right first. You have to work out, as you said in the beginning, you need to listen to your customers, find out their terminology, what their pain points are, etc. Build the content around that, which your marketing automation is then going to leverage, and that helps you to build success. If you're not doing it that way, then it's just another technology tool, and a tool is a tool. It's as good or as bad as what you're putting into it. So the first part of getting the strategy right, I think, is the critical element. And then it's a question of using the technology, the marketing automation software, to ensure that you are successful. And while I was talking about sales and marketing alignment, I think marketing automation software can really help with that. So where they turn around, if you link it to your CRM system, and you can have your opportunity to contact ratio linked back into your marketing automation, so then the right messages can go out to the particular people at the right time. So, you know, if you're early stage, it can be white papers. As soon as you move on to later stages, they need to reduce risk, make sure you're a good choice, so then it's case studies, and you can tailor those. You know, marketing automation could easily turn around and say, this is the same case study, but one's going to be for your CFO, so it's all about cost reduction. One's going to be for the IT guy, so that's all going to be about ease of deployment. And of course, if you were talking about pipeliner, one would go to the VP of sales, and it would be, okay, this is about how we can make it visually more important, how we can turn around and give you accurate forecasts, all those sort of good things that they need to see and be able to understand.
Right, exactly. Understanding your customer, having your goals and your strategy up front is what's going to drive everything else, but not just for 2015. Buy the marketing automation software or the CRM for the company who you want to be when you grow up, because you're going to eventually be able to fit into that versus outgrowing it and then having to, you know, move away from it and upgrade. It's just going to be more of a headache later. So establish, you know, CRM and marketing automation is really utility these days. It's something that really is embedded in your company. So choose the technology that is going to bring you where you want to go.
Absolutely. So how do you feel about lead scoring within the marketing automation tools? Because there's a lot of those that are doing the lead scoring. Some of them are better than others at that sort of thing, so predictive leads analytics, etc. How do you rate those?
Yeah, lead scoring is huge for us. We look at a couple different factors. We look at demographic information, firmographic information, and then the behavioral. So not only do our users, web users, get scored based on what they're doing on the website, you know, 5 points here or there for looking at blog posts, or, you know, negative points for unsubscribing from an email, or more points for doing a demo. But we also look at who they are from a firmographic perspective, because if they're not the right fit for us, we don't want to, or we're not the right fit for them, we don't want to push that relationship if it's not right. So lead scoring is a great way to really qualify and make sure that you're talking to the right person. But then we also include the qualification process of having a BDR follow-up when they actually do take a significant action on the site, which could just expedite the process and help that person move their lead score up all the way if they're the right fit.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's having that, the ability for the human interaction, so you can make a decision and jump it forwards without being overly automated. I think it's critical.
Right. Yeah, you need a mix of the automated and the real human touch.
Yep, absolutely. Let's move on to question 6. How often should you review leads, and why?
I would review your leads now and then now.
Yeah.
And then now. Constantly be looking at your data. I mean, the beauty of being a salesperson and a marketer in 2015 is the ability to know in real time how what you're doing is performing. And you know, it's not the days of like you put up a billboard and you just don't know how many people saw it, or you get insights once a month from a vendor. This is real-time stuff and technology that can provide that. So use it and always be looking. And as you get larger, obviously there's the ability, you have to scale, so you can't know every detail about every lead, but you can create some great reports in your CRM, and that really serves up that information both at 30,000 feet, okay, how many leads, or what were the basic type of leads that were coming in, down to the specific reports of, okay, what were the leads like today, what's going on, what are their lead score, and really look at it in different ways.
Yeah, I think that's true. With all leads, certainly you should look at it now. As a salesperson, I want it straight away. If I can encourage any sort of interaction as soon as possible, that's better for me, particularly when we're in an era of the buyer cycle going further and further out, so we're getting less and less contact until later in the stages. The opportunity to engage earlier is what I want marketing to do for me. That's what I want you to help me with, as a sales guy, is to get me in earlier so I can help shape the journey. Once you're at 70%, it's a bit late, really. All I'm doing effectively is just clarifying what they think they understand, which often isn't quite. That's all about how well your marketing efforts have taken place up until that point in time. If your content didn't really portray your product very well or your service offering, then you can lose out to the competition just based upon the fact that they have a misconception. So yeah, that engagement is good.
It's definitely it's going to give you the leg up and the competitive advantage, not only over your competition, but other sales folks, when you have your finger on the pulse of the data and the leads coming in, and you know more about those leads than anybody else. Data gives you a huge competitive advantage. You just have to take advantage of it yourself and really look at it all the time.
Absolutely. So in that context, when does a lead, and what is a lead? When does it become a MQL, so a marketing qualified lead, that should become an SQL, so a sales qualified lead? What are the three different stages, and how would you define them?
So, it depends on your organization. Everybody does it a little differently. For us, and the way that we've done it is basically if they fill out a form on our site, they're considered a lead. And I've also in the past, I've worked at companies where they've just been considered a form complete or something like that, where they're not a lead yet until they actually are qualified to see if they're lead worthy. For example, we might get college students downloading our ebooks because they would be good for an assignment. Obviously, that's not relevant, but so that person isn't really a lead. They might be more of a form complete. But you have to look at that data to figure it out. But for us, the way that we do it is you're considered a lead if you fill out a form, which could either be a demo, free trial, ebook, webinar registration, or contact us. And then from there, you're in the lead scoring program to kind of figure out, okay, what are you doing or what are you interested in to then further qualify the person. So once they hit a certain number of points in the lead scoring program, they become a marketing qualified lead, MQL. Another way to qualify the lead, again, is the qualification process of actually calling the lead once they've completed the form. Hey, thanks for downloading that ebook. It sounds like you're very interested in, how to build lists with great data. Can I help you? And really, have that conversation and qualify them on the phone. So there's different ways to qualify. And then once they're qualified, you have the demo. And you have the conversation, and you determine if they are an actual sales qualified buyer. Are they ready to buy now? Do they have the budget? Is it the right fit? All of those things to make them sales qualified. And at that point, they become an opportunity. And then then from there, we can close them, and they become a customer.
Fantastic. I think that's quite good. So what sort of KPIs are you going to, in fact, actually, that's going to be another question later on, so I won't ask that question. Is automated deletion of leads recommended? Yes or no?
No, never delete data. Never delete data.
It's a fairly obvious answer, that one. Don't delete the data. No, you've paid to get it. Why on earth would you delete it?
You've worked so hard to get this data. Why would you delete it? It's more than that, though, too. Data contains information that you might be able to use in the future. So, for example, if you have a lead that comes in from your website, They fill out a form, but they're already in your CRM as, you know, an existing lead or what contact account, whatever. You match that data up, and instead of deleting that new lead that just came in because you think that they're the same person, they might have something interesting in that form they filled out, or there could be interesting data in there. Maybe it's a new email address or a new mailing address or a new title, something like that. So if you were to delete it, you would lose that information. You know, other times we see folks wanting to delete data after they lose an account, or, you know, a customer leaves or it's a closed lost. And that's not good either, because that person, maybe they are moving to a new company and that's why they couldn't buy from you, and then that's a new opportunity, you know? So always keep your data. You can archive it, you can merge it, but never delete it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Never delete the if you don't have to, don't delete it. You really don't need to do it. And in fact, I would say that it's counterproductive in some circumstances to delete the data. The classic one being that you've mentioned, where you've lost the deal. You've lost it for now, and quite often, particularly in the early stages, you can lose it because they're simply not ready today. That doesn't mean to tomorrow, next year, that they're not going to be ready. And that, for me, is entirely where marketing automation does kick in, and you start having drip campaigns where you can turn around and say, you know what, this deal has been lost. There was no decision made, but there was clearly enough of a reason to drive them to your website and begin investigating it to begin with. And they're spending time and energy doing this, so it's not that there isn't any cost to themselves either. So turn around, keep that lead, particularly if it gets to later deal cycles, because then of course you've got more and more information, you've spent more and more time with them, which means the cost of that lead effectively, or opportunity, has gone quite high, particularly if you're doing one-to-one demos with them. So the data quality should be very good. You should have a clear understanding what the problems are. Let's say you lost it to a competition, particularly in the CRM industry. You know what? Their contract's going to be up for renewal next year. Put it onto a marketing drip campaign, communicate with them on a continuous basis just to make sure that they know you're there. Every time you have a good story, send it to them to make sure you can really rub it into the fact that they went with the competition and they're not having quite so good a time.
Right, exactly. Content, we almost call it content selling, where you're creating relevant, helpful content at stages like that, where they're not specifically in a stage in the funnel, but you want to keep in touch and be relevant, and you can wake up a lot of dead leads, cold leads, with helpful content and by staying in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to question 8. Which lead generation metrics, or the KPIs, should be monitored?
So there's so many that you could look at, and there's definitely the conversation of vanity metrics versus more core metrics, the actionable metrics. And for every organization, it might be different, but my recommendation is to really pick a couple, 2 to 3, and focus there. If you start to have a lot of metrics, it's very hard to balance. For us, we look at our lead trajectory. So are we growing 10% month over month? And you know, obviously, there's so many metrics that fall under that, and I look at those things like web traffic, total number of leads, qualified, percentage of qualified to total. But the lead trajectory is more of a bigger picture, so I can just report that to our CEO, and I can say, okay, here's how we're doing month over month and how we're growing and going up and to the right. So something, you know, a bigger, lofty goal will encompass a lot of little metrics and measures underneath. So that's a big one. And then the other one is total leads compared to marketing qualified leads. So what is that percentage, and is that growing? So I want to make sure that not only are we bringing in great leads, but they are qualified. Because, yeah, like you were saying in the beginning, you could just buy leads if you want, and that's not necessarily going to get you anywhere. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is actually quality and bringing in the right people.
Absolutely. I think that's, from a sales guy's perspective, that's absolutely the killer. You can give me as many leads as you like, but if they don't create opportunities for me to be able to sell, it just doesn't matter. And it's that straightforward. And that comes back to, as we were talking earlier on, sales and marketing alignment. If that isn't part of the KPI equation, then you've got to ask yourself, the marketing director needs to be turning around and putting that on the table. The sales director needs to be putting it on the table and saying, these are the things we want to see together, so you can qualify what that is, and it needs to be a KPI of marketing to produce those qualified leads which can be turned into opportunities. And for myself, actually, I would turn around and say, you know what, we're all in it together, so in which case, why shouldn't marketing on the lead generation side be tasked with revenue generation in exactly the same way as sales are?
Yeah, that's something we talk about too, and we do actually look at how many marketing leads turn into pipe and revenue, and that's something that is, it's crucial because sales needs to get involved in B2B, but there are instances like Capture where you can eventually get to the touchless sale, and if you get to the touchless sale, then marketing can drive that whole experience. And the other piece is that 70 to 80% of the research and decision making has been done by the consumer before they even talk to the salesperson. So the idea is for the website and for marketing materials to answer every single question the prospect could possibly be thinking of or asking themselves, so that when they finally talk to the salesperson, the question isn't, what do you do? It's, all right, where's the contract? Let's negotiate price, and really make it a turnkey process so that sales doesn't have to focus on anything but actually closing that deal.
That's what we describe as, well, order taking. It's what we describe as transactional sales. See, I would say that depending on the type of products and services you're offering, and whether it's a B2C or B2B, that you get the both in both worlds. There is the one job to try and answer as many questions as you possibly can, but you're never really going to be able to answer all of the questions. And particularly when it's under the customer's going to have to read so much that they're not going to take it all in. They're going to be bored by the time they're finished reading. And you can only produce so many videos, etc. So in which case, then the job of marketing is to give a good deal of information, but each of the call to actions need to be, if you want some professional consulting on your issue, contact our sales guys. Mm-hmm. But of course, sales has this dirty word now, so you don't want to make it sales. They need to be one of our consultants, effectively. But it's the same job. What you're doing is you're clarifying what the customer's issue is, and then you're turning around and saying, we can help you because you have the issue that we resolve. And that works, I think, and it works very well. But I think the issue can be that marketing see, as you've mentioned, that their goal is to get to this transactional sale where the salespeople are picking up the order only, and that doesn't always work that way. I think it does to a great extent, and that's why you've gone for B2B sales. It's something like 57%, B2C 70% of the way through, etc., if not transactionless altogether. But you still need to have those CTAs in your website to make sure that the sales guy can be contacted. And I think a lot of the lead generation mechanisms these days are cutting out that salesperson element, which may be self-propagating of the whole 70%, if we try and drive that to be, you don't need a salesperson because I can provide all of the information up front.
I think that the one-to-one relationship and knowing somebody at the company and that experience is still so important and valid that you're right, it can't all be automated. We've talked about this, how there is a mix of the human touch as well as the automation. And if you are a company that's not well known, or you're offering a product or service that may not be top of mind, there's got to be more of that human touch than the automated piece. So it's a balance. It depends on your company. But yeah, I mean, I think you get creating a sense of like thought leadership within your organization. Everybody's an expert at what they do. They've been doing it for so long. They know the drill. Tapping into that and really getting those voices out there and those faces out there so that when they come, they recognize and they want to speak to them. That's huge.
Yep, I completely agree. And I think that's why we need to, particularly in Europe, we don't like to talk about personal brands particularly because we see that as a conflict with the company brand. So the Europeans, we tend to have an issue with the whole social media as part of that extension, the whole experts. Experts you can be, but you shouldn't shout about it too much. But turning around in the US, the personal branding has become more and more important. shouting about the fact you have experts on staff is a good thing for any organization. And I think that's something that the Europeans certainly do need to learn from the US.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that, and I definitely understand. I think that some of the concerns I've heard about it is, what if that person leaves the company, or
Yeah.
what things like that, where it's
Yeah.
like you've built all this personal brand and the person's gone. But at the same time, there's a level of transparency with that, and a celebration of it that you can do to really make any bad PR good PR. The personal brand thing is really exciting. We've had the opportunity with it to get new customers because they just want to be with those people. It's kind of like I have a hairstylist that I love, and I don't care which salon she's at. I want to go with her, And it's not that far off in this world where we feel connected with people, and it doesn't matter where they work. It's the fact that we want to be with them and spend time with them and get to know them.
Absolutely, and in fact, I'd argue that that happens anyway, because of course people are buying from people, they're building relationships with them. The fact that it happens to be in somebody's paper-based notebook versus electronically on LinkedIn or Twitter, it really doesn't make much difference. If they perceive somebody to be an expert, they'll talk to them anyway, and if they're going to move, they'll move anyway. I mean, I am an expert in my field, but I have organizations which I've sold to previously who won't move with me because they've turned around and they bought from a company. They like me as the representative, and they like the knowledge I bring to the table, but ultimately they bought the system on a company-to-company basis because it is a B2B environment. And we all know and we all understand that people move organizations.
Right. Especially in our industry, B2B SaaS, and it is a fast-moving, changing place. But like the other things come into play besides the people. It's the budget, it's the timing, it's the resources, it's the need of the technology. There's so many things that come into consideration, but I think that knowing the people behind the brand can only help.
Yeah, I completely agree. Right, let's move on to question 9. What are some of the best practice tips to qualify, distribute, and engage leads?
So I think it goes back to the pain points and understanding what are the challenges and what's keeping them up at night, and then creating that kind of content. We like to get to know the other brands that our prospects and customers use. So for marketers, what are some of the marketing software they use, or what's their favorite CRM for salespeople, and then work together to create collaborative content and webinars and come up with ways to answer their questions in a collaborative way and show them that we're working with other companies and we're all together in this to help you. So I think collaboration with other brands as well as with customers, customer content, that goes far. The testimonial, the case study, that still is one of the best ways to really, help sell and make a customer comfortable.
Okay, fantastic. Let's move on to question 10. When and how should someone assess the results of lead generation campaign? How often should you turn around, look at your lead generation campaign, study the return on investment, whatever that return on investment is going to be?
So, we talked about how you're constantly looking at your leads. We talked about the idea of, you're setting up your metrics and your goals ahead of time before you even, write that first tweet or blog post or any kind of content or outreach. But in terms of, looking at your ROI and really thinking about how you're doing, what we like to do is have as a marketing team, we're sitting down 3 times a week and just looking at that and spending an hour and focusing. So finding your cadence, and then really as a team, sales or marketing are together, looking at those results and tweaking from there. And then having a bigger meeting, whether it's every other week or monthly, with your CEO or with, executive team, to look at those results together, report on them, and get their feedback, and go back and revise from there. Content marketing, social media marketing is constantly changing. What might work today may not work tomorrow. So while your goals and your approach may be set, where yes, we're going to use content, or yes, we're going to focus on top of funnel lead gen, the actual tactics and topics are going to change pretty much like the wind, and you just have to be ready to test and know that.
Stay awake. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I like to say that there's no such thing as failure in social or content, because the worst thing that could happen is nobody sees it. So
Yeah,
it's
I
kind of
guess so.
like the tree falls, But
I guess the worst thing would be, of course, that it goes viral for all the wrong reasons, like Comcast and various other
right.
elements that have happened. Yeah,
I know. I like to think of like any PR is good because you're getting attention and you can do something with it. Obviously, there's bombs to defuse and that can be a huge challenge. But if you can take any situation and turn it around into a positive one for your brand, I think,
yeah,
I mean, look at Martha Stewart. No one remembers that she went to jail, right? It's like you have to think about how you can change your brand around so that people remember the positive about you versus the negative.
absolutely. I always tell people that, in actual fact, the way you judge a company is not when things go right, because everybody can do things right, but when things go wrong. And quite often things do go wrong because that's just the nature of things we do, particularly into the B2B software market where it's complex. There's
Right.
a lot of variables going on. So you know what? It's not all plain sailing. And the difference between a good company and a bad company is how you deal with the problems. If there's a complaint, it's not the fact that there's a complaint that's the issue. It's how you then turn around and stand up. You're honest, you're straightforward, you're transparent, you take ownership, and you resolve that problem. And I think that's the critical element. And so, in which case, yes, even things like Comcast, etc., and other people where it blows up and there are bombs, if you manage it well, it can be positive.
That's right. Having a crisis management plan, and working together as a team and having a person accountable in terms of making those key decisions about how to proceed, all of that is going to set you up for success when and if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Hang on a second, just answer a quick question on Twitter. um, yes,
I hope that the Twitter feed is going well. I can't wait to check it out in a few minutes.
it is. Yeah, I always keep an eye on it because there's questions which come up. So
Great.
therefore, I try to work them into the what we're talking about. So, for example, we had Graham Ingham. He was asking about the what is a lead, what's a marketing qualified lead, etc. So hence I worked that particular question in, which is quite good.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah, there is some feedback on the which actually Babette would and Barb would both like some qualification on, which is on the aspect where we said about I've downloaded an ebook and that's a lead. Now, what we talked about was the fact that it's a lead or a completed form, which are
Right.
two different things. Now, the problem is that most of the time, those people who download an ebook immediately go through to an SDR, so an internal salesperson, who calls you and say, "Hi, do you want to buy my product?"
Yeah, and
So
that's not the best approach.
no, no, it does leave something uh, to be desired. Yes, I think half of it's the training the SDR has been given on how to approach that type of lead, because it's not a lead. Let's face it, it's an indication that they found your ebook interesting. That's what it is, and that's all it is at that point in time. So should these be considered a lead at all, or just a completed form? And it's only when they start to do multiple things, so the lead score, if you want, goes up, should we then start turning around and considering handing them over to some sort of SDR?
Yeah, and that is definitely the question of your organization, what works for you. So if you're getting a lot of leads, I think that you can definitely do the delineation between a form complete and a lead. But if you're not getting a lot of leads, or at this point you're new at this and you're just trying to get as much as you can and do as much data, it's okay to call it a lead, but then qualify it. And when it comes to calling them, yeah, you don't want to be that nasty car salesman. The second they walk in the door, they just want to look at a car. They just want to see whatever, and you're like in their face. It's the same kind of experience when you call them after they download an ebook that doesn't have any product information in it. They just want to learn about the topic or get educated or use it for a meeting.
Yep.
So the qualification call is more about the topic of the ebook, and talking about that versus product. And as you have the conversation of, oh, I really am interested in, your conversation about how to get rid of duplicates and why do you have a lot of duplicates, what's it like, how do you get rid of them, have a conversation. And then as the conversation goes, you might say, well, we should go to demo stage and they're more qualified, or no, they're just looking, let them go and put them into nurture.
I think I think with your product, it's very easy to jump from one to the second. I think, for example, with ours, where you're talking about sales process, downloading an ebook on sales process is not a natural fit for, okay, now we need a CRM system. Yes, having a CRM system definitely helps, but quite often people who download our ebooks, for example, would turn around and have a CRM system in place, or they want help defining a sales process in and of itself. So I think then it's an education process for the SDR to make sure they understand that this isn't a hard sell on the fact they must buy our CRM system now. But
Right.
what you can do, I think, there is you can equip these guys with more information. So there can be a next logical step. So you can turn around and say, here is the next ebook you should look at. This is really helpful. And give them a breadcrumb trail along the buyer cycle to lead them to the natural conclusion that really they do need your CRM system.
Right. Map it out before you go, whatever, however your initial top of funnel message is and how you create it, and map it out. And what's the conversation in the process to get them from sales enablement to CRM? Or for us, we have an ebook on how to network at conferences, and we did that because we go to a lot of conferences. Yep. So how do we take it from point A to point B? Networking conferences has nothing to do with data quality, so you think. So what's the process? Again, addressing the pain points, which may not be directly related to what you do, but relate directly to the customer and their challenges, which is the most important thing of all.
So what I'm hearing here, if I download your marketing book on networking, I'm going to get nailed on data accuracy at some point in the future. Fantastic.
Only what you want.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. I think the breadcrumb trail and the whole strategy, having that in place really works. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time. So thank you very much, Amanda. You were a fantastic guest, and thank you very much for agreeing to be on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to give a quick shout out for Ringlead, the Twitter handle, and your website address?
Yes, please. I'm going to check Twitter right after this, so I'll be on at Amanda L. Nelson, and then at Ringlead on Twitter. Or if you want to use hashtag Ringlead or data quality, we watch all of them, and we'd very much love to chat with you. And I thank you for being part of this.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Amanda. You've been fabulous.
Thank you.
Bye.